Did you forget we're having Deirdre's birthday party?
Oh.
We've got a piñata.
Right. Brilliant. Of course.
Have you forgotten your joy? Oh my lord. He's a downer.
I didn't want the journalist to be angry.
You were the general secretary. She must have known. Just trust me.
I trust you, Arthur. I said I trust you, Arthur.
We'll go to Germany together. We'll take care of each other, no matter what happens.
Guys, I was gonna film a video about We Happy Few today, but I am just too sad. I have no idea why. The world just seems to be just beating me down these days, and I just really don't want to talk about this game that I was planning on talking about. So yeah, apologies guys. Although the development of We Happy Few was not an easy process. If you played the game when it came out, you might have been quite baffled by this strange hybrid tone of an open world survival sandbox game and a dystopian story game. And yeah, people were expecting a narrative focused adventure set in this fascinating dystopian world, and were disappointed to find all this other stuff. Joel Hendricks said, "This is a concept I adore. The idea of a dystopian society where everyone is higher than the Beatles when they wrote Revolution 9 is so fascinating to me." But he also said, to be frank, the gameplay is bleak. The game is not good in any aspect, whether it be stealth, combat, platforming, etc. A Game Central article praised the premise of We Happy Few, but said, "The game is absolutely no fun to play, with highly repetitive quests and a survival element that seems wholly unnecessary." Many people have talked about the elements which held this game back, from the incessant fetch quests to the frustrating AI, the lackluster combat, crafting, environment, status effects, bugs, and I was planning on being one of those people. The first section of this video was originally going to be devoted to talking about the wasted potential of the gameplay, but I really feel like there's enough of that already. Some of the reviews I've read of We Happy Few have been brutal, and I do understand why. The most egregious part of the game for me was the wasted potential of joy. I will talk more about joy later, but for now, all you need to know are the basics, that it makes you happy and it makes you forget bad memories.
That feels entirely too good.
It is bizarre that the difference between being on and off this happiness hallucination-inducing drug is almost nothing visually and absolutely nothing gameplay-wise. Where's the squalor while off joy? Where are the rats in the streets which you might see as sparrows or squirrels while on joy? Where's the memory loss, the forgetting of your objective, or the skewing of the map whilst on the drug, making playing more difficult? But I digress. I am not here to criticize the game. As I've said already, there's almost nothing left to say on that front. Myself, I'm more interested in the genuinely excellent dystopian world that Compulsion games have crafted. One which takes inspiration from Brave New World 1984, Handmaid's Tale, Brazil, Oryx and Crate, Fahrenheit 451, and it still manages to make itself so unique. It explores themes of authority, belief, guilt, forgiveness and self-destruction, the dangers of science and technology, the idea of sacrificing humanity for happiness. And it's all contained not in a nation or a world state, but on a single island town in Britain. Like I said, I am amazed at how this game stands out despite taking so much inspiration from all those dystopias I mentioned. I could honestly talk about it for hours, and depending on the length of this video, I might have. And after looking over every inch of this game, I've come up with something of a theory as to what is really happening in the fictional town of Wellington Wells. Almost everything you might learn from reading about this game and doing research might suggest that this is a town built on joy. Everything points to joy being the central pillar of the regime. But in my opinion, there is something even more important than that. But for now, I need to relax, slow down, and considering how much I've already praised the story, a lot of people might be wondering, why wasn't the game a success? Which, if you aren't already aware, it wasn't. The development process was plagued with not quite issues, but feedback which prompted them to change the entire direction of the game multiple times. Compulsion Games was founded in 2009 and released its first game, Contrast, in 2013, which had a mixed critical and user reception. From what I could find, the most common complaint in reviews seemed to be that the game felt rushed. It had a great concept, but ultimately failed to live up to this concept in a satisfying way. This type of complaint will certainly come up later. After Contrast, Compulsion's founder Guillaume Provost and his team moved on to a new game, We Happy Few. The most important thing to note about this early development process is that the game was never intended to focus on the story. This was only changed after initial user reception at PAX East in 2015 and after they began early access testing in 2016. Jessica Conditt quotes Prevost stating that what the public and press were telling us they loved about our game wasn't anything like the procedural, story-light, roguelike action game we were creating at all. The team, far from a dystopian and character-driven narrative, had been aiming to fine-tune the gameplay first, the world second, and the story third. Now, after this reaction, they switched gears. They literally switched to Gearbox as their new publisher, as well as increasing the price of the game and starting a Kickstarter. This was all to get the funds to, of course, improve and finish the game, but most importantly to flesh out that story. Fast forward to release date in August of 2018 and We Happy Few is released to more mixed reviews.
That real kind of Frankenstein of trying to please too many people at once was definitely one of the things that I felt was difficult, and that's due to the changing nature of the direction that the project took.
Like I said before, despite Compulsion's early emphasis on survival in the private development process, many people were excited about the direction of the story and were survived by all these open world survival elements. I mean, I certainly was. But in the game and on the online wiki, there are still so many dystopian elements which make this world worth exploring. But before we start looking at the wiki and all the niche stuff, let's first have a look at the story which is presented in-game without thinking about any of its influences or consequences. I do just want to say that if you did play the game and you were frustrated or disappointed or let down in any way, or maybe if you got the impression that the game wasn't good from that section of my video or from a review you read, then I highly recommend watching that documentary, The Cost of Joy, that I used footage from, because it really is excellent and it highlights the hard work that all the people over at Compulsion did do, from the narrative director in Alex Epstein to the art director in Whitney Clayton, who was the first employee, Nyla Hajjas, David Sears, Sam Abbott, and of course Guillaume himself. They all seem like, apart from just being lovely people, really hard workers and really talented people. So from now on, I'm just here to praise the game because I really think it is excellent. Sorry. I'm here now to talk about. The story begins with that famous scene of our first protagonist, Arthur Hastings. He works as a censor in the Department of Archives, Printing and Recycling in the British town of Wellington Wells, a fictional island that exists in an alternate timeline where America never entered World War II and Britain fell to German occupation.
To invade successfully, the Germans first had to control the air, and so began the Battle of Britain. The Luftwaffe, with twice the number of planes, intended to sweep the RAF from the skies.
Around 1947, the people of Wellington Wells did an unspecified very bad thing, which caused German troops to leave the island and retreat back to the mainland. But this very bad thing left the population in a permanent state of devastating guilt. The solution to this was a hallucinogenic drug commissioned by General Robert Byng and the Executive Committee. Joy. Joy places its user into a chemically induced state of jubilation, suppressing unhappy memories and affecting the way one sees the world. Taking joy is enforced in Wellington Wells and encouraged through the propaganda machine of Uncle Jack. Anyone who receives a bad batch of joy and therefore cannot take the drug anymore is either killed by angry citizens or sent to live on the outskirts of the island in the Garden District, branded a wastrel. And those who refuse joy entirely are downers, an even worse label. The system, we're told, is a perfect method of governance. Its slogan is, "It's never too late to have a happy past." But this is misleading. A more appropriate quote would have been that of Leo Tolstoy, also used in the game. Happy people have no history. And these happy people don't. No one can remember the very bad thing. And no one realizes that Wellington Wells, as put by the We Happy Few Wikipedia page, is not thriving, but a dystopian police state on the verge of collapse. In the late 1960s, Arthur Hastings becomes a downer. After seeing a newspaper clipping of him and his brother Percy while at work, Arthur refuses to take his joy and witnesses his co-workers devour the guts of a rat in a joy-induced hallucination. He is chased by bobbies, the policemen who prowl the streets, into the Garden District where the game's story slows down. Arthur decides he's going to escape Wellington Wells, find Percy, and he sets off on this quest with conviction.
I am coming for you, Percy. I haven't got it all figured out, but I will find you.
Along the way, though, he discovers more and more of this town's miserable past.
We didn't want the Germans to be angry, did we? We were so scared, or maybe just so tired, so we hanged them to encourage the others. I wonder if we'd made the Germans take the kids by force instead of bringing them down to the station singing London Bridge, if things would be different now.
The very bad thing that Wellington Wells did back in 1947 was send all of their children aged under 13 on a train to Germany, including Arthur's brother Percy, in exchange for freedom from German occupation, never to be heard from again. In the 17 years since, no child has been born. In a chilling scene, Arthur, along with his old neighbour Ollie Starkey, discovers that the tanks the Germans were occupying the town with were made of papier-mâché, and laments that they could have risen up and refused to hand over the children if they'd known this. Later on, he also discovers the extent to which the town is collapsing.
I have a feeling there's not supposed to be quite so many red lights on this board.
More and more bad joy is creating wastrels and even inducing actual plague victims in the districts, and Dr. Anton Verloc plans to permanently place the Wellies in a state of joy, essentially through lobotomization.
You're planning to lobotomise the people of Wellington Wells, aren't you?
Lobotomize is a rather inflammatory metaphor, but yes, I have been asked to synthesize.
As for Arthur, he remembers that his brother Percy was actually 13 and therefore too old to go on the train to Germany back in 1947.
I don't want you to go to Germany.
You think I want to go?
It had been Arthur, who was 12, and was meant to go on the train. He had convinced his own brother to come with him.
What if I sneak you on the train?
And then used the fact that Percy struggled with social communication and likely had learning difficulties.
I trust you, Arthur.
To swap their identities and send his brother to Germany in his place.
I promised I'd go with him.
And you are too old to go to Germany, are you not?
He can't take care of himself.
Well, along then.
As Arthur finally escapes the town at the end of his section, he realizes what he did to his brother and is devastated.
I did something terrible.
He finally admits that the chance of him actually finding Percy is almost none, and tells the policeman on the bridge that he can't forgive himself.
Then who is there to forgive me?
Some try to forget.
I can't do that. Not anymore. I wish I still believed in some sort of mercy.
Life goes on. That is the mercy. Come on, sir. Once you're out there, you'll know what to do.
His story is a very powerful one, an emotional, devastating journey that ends on a somber, depressing but thematically satisfying note. There's only one problem with Arthur's character, and that is Sally. Act 2 follows our second protagonist, Sally Boyle, Arthur's childhood best friend and essentially adopted sister. And in Sally's story we learn that Arthur's kind of a dick.
I've missed you for 14 years. I think I can escape Wellington Wells without your help. And I definitely don't want any favours from your latest friend.
Arthur!
Sally Boyle grew up with a family, but in 1947, when it came time for children to board the train, Sally's mother had a breakdown and murdered her children, then her husband, then herself.
And Mum said, "You don't have to worry about the train. No one's going on the train."
Leaving Sally, who had been out at the time, completely alone. She moved in with Arthur and his parents, but after Arthur's mother dies, Arthur's father coerces her into sex. On discovering them, Arthur kicks Sally out of the house and doesn't speak to her for over a decade until the events of the game.
Am I really that awful?
What? Just because you seduced my dad in my mum's bed while you were staying in our house?
How was I supposed to tell him no? I'd never anywhere else to go.
Sally's main story in the game involves A. trying to keep up with the demands of the police force, who she makes an alternate form of joy for, B. looking after her illegal baby, whose father is another man in a position of power who coerced Sally, C. dealing with the manipulative General Byng, and D. escaping Wellington Wells. In the end, she does escape, but not before a series of encounters with our man, Arthur Hastings. In Sally's story, their conversations are completely different to how we saw them previously. They were rough before, with Arthur continuing to blame Sally for seducing his father, but now he really does seem like a complete arsehole, ignoring her when she confides in him with her deepest secret.
Even after all those awful things I said.
Oh, it's always what you want, always what you need, every little Sally whim. Bloody cod liver oil.
Sorry.
Let's go together. We're two musketeers.
It's going crazy out there. We have to go now.
I've got a baby.
It's just self-preservation, Sally. No hard feelings.
Arthur?
In terms of building up the world, Sally's story is just fine. We see some more intricacies of the Joy production process, as well as human experiments on the Downers out in Ratholme, and magic and cults, I guess. But in some ways it's kind of unsatisfying. I could talk further about what I perceive to be the strange way the game handles her character arc, which for some reason doesn't seem to place Arthur in the wrong for blaming Sally. At least her ending is somewhat happy, but I'm not here to talk about the characters. Sorry.
It won't be enough. People won't face facts. Not until we take their joy. That's what we have to do, Ollie. And when we do that, they'll murder each other in the street.
The third protagonist, Ollie Starkey, sets out on a quest to reveal the secrets of Wellington Wells to its people alongside his trusty partner, a hallucination of his dead daughter Margaret. He's eccentric, he has a patchy memory, he's known by most of the town, and clearly despises Wellington Wells' face of propaganda Uncle Jack, who tells the citizens to conform and take their joy. Ollie finds out about the papier-mâché tanks along with Arthur, but we later learn that as the General's secretary, he 100% knew about this, and even bought the newspaper and glue to create the tanks.
Would have risen up.
But Ollie, you were the General Secretary.
I did.
You must have known.
Throughout this story, we see Ollie's bond with Margaret and find out that Jack Worthing, aka Uncle Jack, was the one who got her killed. However, a fairly straightforward and short storyline has my favourite ending of the three. Ollie finds out that the executive committee is so high on joy they've ceased to function as any kind of authoritative or administrative body.
They're the executive committee?
Furthermore, Uncle Jack is gone. The game hints to this earlier, with wastrels in the Uncle Jack fan club writing letters complaining about only showing reruns in the Garden District, when in fact everybody is seeing reruns. They're just too stoned in the parade and village to notice.
Oh, but we never get the new programs out here.
Jack's last reel he recorded reveals that not only is the town running out of food, but he is actually Margaret's father, and it was Ollie who sold her out simply to spite Jack.
No, that's not right. It was Jack what turned you in and I what tried to save you.
No, Ollie, you turned me in.
I'm afraid we've come to the end of our time. But you were my daughter.
Jack Worthing. Margaret Worthing.
Ollie, who is devastated, follows Margaret's advice. First, he broadcasts the recording of Uncle Jack imploring everyone in Wellington Wells to stop taking their joy. Then, before making his escape, he allows himself to let Margaret go, ending with the line he's been saying to her for the entire game, as she tells him to forget her.
You're right. You're always right. You're right. You're always right. Right. You're always right. Right. You're always right.
I think it's time you put away childish things.
You're right. You're always right. Goodbye, Margaret.
It's shockingly quite beautiful, especially considering how annoyed I was getting with some of the game's mechanics at this point, and I'm really glad that I stuck it out. There is also an epilogue to the game. First, Arthur gets the choice to take this pill called Oblivion and return to Wellington Wells. If you choose to remember, then you end the game with this great scene.
Lovely day for it.
Are you joking? It's been shitty all day. Did you not notice the drops of water falling out of the sky? Gonna be shitty tonight too.
You're right. It has been rather a shit day.
If instead you choose to forget, then, well, I don't know what happens. I didn't choose that option. I just don't know, but I like the ending I chose. Like Sally and Ollie's, it's hopeful. Now, I don't know about you, but from that description, this sounds like an incredibly compelling story. So, what dragged it down? Yeah, this is the point in the video where I was going to list all my issues with the gameplay, but I'm not going to do that. There are issues for sure, maybe quite a lot depending on who you ask. For a moment, let's pretend that gameplay doesn't matter, and indeed if we do that, then We Happy Few, in my opinion, becomes almost a masterpiece. And that's great, because I'm here to focus on the positives of the game. Let's talk about why I really made this video. The origin of dystopian fiction can be traced back to Thomas More's Utopia. Utopia is derived from the Greek ou, meaning not, and topos, meaning place. So not place, i.e. a utopia, a perfect world, cannot exist. So in that sense, while dystopia technically means a bad utopia, another way to think of it would be as a real version of a utopia, of which its reality makes it inherently bad. And despite the name, even More's novel can be seen as a type of dystopia, with many themes similar to We Happy Few. The French Revolution, H.G. Wells and Jack London all produced works which contributed to what dystopia is today. But the birth of modern dystopian fiction is often accepted to be We by Yevgeny Zamyatin. We takes place in a totalitarian state called the One State, presided over by the benefactor, where citizens are identified with numbers and constantly surveilled. Many themes and elements present in We go on to directly inspire some more well-known dystopian fiction. For example, society came to be how it is through war and weapons of mass destruction, sex and procreation have been hijacked by the state, and individualism has been all but annihilated. Interestingly, all of these are present in We Happy Few to some degree. Society came to be how it is through war, procreation has been hijacked and erased by the state, and the people of Wellington Wales all wear these same masks and seem to act as a collective rather than as individuals, completely unaware of their own personal past. Even Verloc's suggestion of a permanent version of joy mirrors the Great Operation in We, which essentially turns unruly citizens into tractors in human form. There are plenty of differences between the two though, mainly authority. In We Happy Few, the theme of authority is central for almost the exact opposite reason as in We, and to explore this we should look at some different dystopian works. Alright, let's talk about the most famous dystopian novel of all time. Published in 1949 by George Orwell, the similarities between 1984 and We Happy Few are clear from just reading a vague plot outline. Winston, the main character, works as a censor of history, rewriting records such as the Times to match the state's version of history and sometimes fabricating entirely. In We Happy Few, Arthur works as a censor for archived newspapers, redacting anything which might remind the town of its dark past, or indeed anything remotely sad. Big Brother, who is the figurehead of the regime in 1984, has a very similar name to Uncle Jack. Both are the center of propaganda in their respective societies, each cultivating a very loyal and even familial following. In 1984, children give up their parents out of loyalty to Big Brother. In We Happy Few, even wastrels retain their loyalty and reverence for Uncle Jack. In 1984, there are three classes of people: those in the inner party, those in the outer party, and the proles. In We Happy Few, there are the elite wellies, the middle class wellies, and the wastrels, all living in separate districts. When people act out, they are taken by the regime and their disappearances covered up, and both societies came about through war. And yet the themes of authority are somehow opposites in these two worlds. How? Well, 1984 centres around Oceania, the unification of the Americas, the South of Africa, Britain, New Zealand, Australia, which formed in opposition to the Soviet invasion of Europe and the formation of Eurasia, all in the wake of mass nuclear bombings in the early 1950s. Within Oceania, a civil war has led to the rise of INGSOC, a socialist party by name, but in practice the leader of a totalitarian, anti-socialist, yet also anti-capitalist state. Enforcing their authority are the four London ministries: love, truth, war and plenty, as well as the repressive thought police who constantly vaporize, i.e. erase, people from existence. Throughout the 1950s and 60s, Ingsoc, or just the party, consolidated their power and created a monopoly on facts. A strange, simplistic language called Newspeak is invented, which makes the very concept of debate and communication a controllable tool of the state. And the criminalization of non-conforming thoughts makes people terrified of even thinking the wrong thing, for fear that the thought police would come and make them an unperson. History is constantly being rewritten, and they are constantly at war with either Eurasia or East Asia, this keeps changing, over the equatorial front. This war is used to justify food rationing, harsh repression, and the destruction of individualism. So, authority in 1984 is completely oppressive and controlling. It governs thoughts and language as well as media and actions. The constant propaganda has successfully indoctrinated an entire new generation, and Winston, the character who at first dreamed of rebellion, ends the book submitting to his love for Big Brother. It's a superstate, i.e. the state controls every aspect of life. To sum up in one sentence, authority is repression. In We Happy Few, authority is non-existent, or at least that's how it appears. Originally, during the German occupation of 1943 to 47, there was a sort of military dictatorship on the island, Colonel von Stauffenberg and General Byng. As all children under 13 were starting to be registered, the executive committee was set up to govern. But the years after the German withdrawal were ones of social unrest, culminating in the Breeder riots of 1950, where 3 pregnant women were killed. People harbored such guilt at the idea that their children were never coming back, that they literally couldn't stand to see another child be born, and the executive committee decided that they were beyond a natural recovery. So they, along with General Byng, commissioned Joy in 1951 and began mass producing it by 1953. By this time, certain governmental branches were well established, like the one that Arthur works for, the Department of Archives, Printing and Recycling. And it seems at some point there was a competent, repressive, propaganda-producing system in place to control the people. But by the 1960s, this system is gone. The executive committee is stoned on Joy, Uncle Jack is gone and all his tapes are reruns, Anton Verloc works obsessively on this permanent version of Joy, and General Byng is entirely disinterested. Of course there is the brutal police force, but even that seems to be falling apart, with bobbies often acting out of their own self-interest, taking bribes of scotch, attacking who they want, and always being high on Blackberry Joy. Overall, there is no real authority. No Ingsoc to rewrite history or implement extensive surveillance or keep the town's food supplies from running out. The executive committee's mantra, in posterium concordio, or into the future with joy, is now obsolete. The people only continue to conform to the regime because of a reliance on joy. Or do they? Again, I have a theory about this. But first, a story which reveals a different type of dystopian world, one which more closely resembles the situation in Wellington Wells than 1984 does. Brazil takes place in a dystopian world of hyperconsumerism and totalitarianism and follows the story of Sam Lowry, a low-ranking government official. What's interesting about Brazil is that because it's not a book but a film, the world is technically less fleshed out. Terry Gilliam's style is of course full of personality and gives us a sense of the state of society, but we have no actual tangible past, no route from that world to ours. I really hope the mic is working right now. And this was purposeful in a lot of ways. Gilliam didn't see Brazil as a prediction for our dark future, but as a satirized representation of the present. There is no evil regime, there is no Big Brother to point to as the center of propaganda, there is no Ingsoc to rule as a tyrant. The real tyrant, to quote George Rockoll Schmidt, is endless paperwork and over-regulation. The world is a bureaucratic maze of inefficiency and complacency. People work and don't feel oppressed by the government. Many even actively support it because they feel this illusion of freedom.
I'm on security level 5 now, so Mr. Helpman relies on me more and more. It's been a great year.
You sound worried.
Worried? Me? If I'm worried about anyone, Sam, it's you.
Consumerism is a major theme in Brazil, and absurd moments like when some of the characters continue to talk and eat their food in a restaurant that has just been subject to a supposed terrorist attack, gossiping about the latest plastic surgery, show how effectively hyperconsumerism dictates obedience and distracts the people from real issues. And there are lots of issues. It's implied that the terrorist attacks happening around the city may just be faulty state technology, and the inciting incident of the film happens when a literal bug in a teleprinter causes the police to arrest and kill the wrong man. Yet the people of this world aren't aware of these issues because they are being distracted to the most exaggerated degree. The real authority, rather than repression, is distraction. So how does this relate to We Happy Few? Well, Wellington Wells has a similar story to Brazil by the 1960s, not just because of its retro-futuristic vibe or Monty Python-esque comedy, but because, as previously mentioned, there is no real, all-powerful authority. And like in Brazil, distraction, bureaucracy, and consumerism often stop people from realizing this. There are countless activities and societies in Wellington Wells, including regular fashion shows in the parade which are a mess behind the scenes, and Victory Day, which happens every single month. Arthur works as a bureaucrat himself, redacting newspapers with the idea that he's doing a good thing in his head. There is no indoctrination, just distraction. However, Wellington Wells has something that the world of Brazil does not. Joy. Joy is literally made to keep people happy and make them forget anything negative. You might then assume that joy is the thing that keeps the people in line, so much so that the executive committee can just pop joy pills themselves and ignore their responsibility to control the people. Perhaps the consumerism, which is more limited than Brazil, and the bureaucracy, which is less all-encompassing, would not be enough on their own. Perhaps joy is the ultimate authority on the island. But if that's the case, what about the wastrels? If you take the idea that consumerism, bureaucracy, and most importantly joy are the real tyrants, then why is it that the wastrels, discarded and sent to live on the fringes of the island with no bureaucracy, no consumerism or joy, still seem to be convinced by the regime to some degree? Unlike the proles of 1984, who are largely ignorant of the party's propaganda, the wastrels still love Uncle Jack, and many even yearn for joy, despite hating the wellies from the village and the parade. Arthur continually says to them in passing voice lines,
"At least we have our memories, right?"
To which there is never a response.
Watch out for the ones with plague. They look sick, but then they suddenly become wild dogs.
So there is still some sort of authority acting on the wastrels, which makes them resistant to, well, resistance. The maze of complacency in Wellington Wells is rooted in something deeper. We Happy Few isn't the authoritarian regime of 1984, but it's also not quite the over-regulated nightmare of Brazil. And one of the things that makes it stand out is joy. And although we've already established that joy isn't the be-all and end-all for our dystopia, we should talk about it in more detail. After all, it's such a unique idea that's never been done before. Right?
Unpleasantness, suffering, pain.
Yes, I want all of that. And all of the things you've done away with. I want danger, I want poetry, I want goodness, I want sin, I want freedom.
Put for the record, what you are really saying is that you claim the right to be unhappy.
The intended effects of joy, as listed on the wiki, are eliciting happiness, like MDMA, visual and auditory hallucinations, like 2CB, and amnesia and repressing bad memories. Side effects are that overconsumption can lead to building a tolerance and therefore addiction, along with amnesia-fueled joy spirals, severe memory loss, and shivering and jaw clenching. It also acts as a contraceptive. Remember that for later, all of it, but that last point especially. Now, for those of you who are at all well-read on dystopian literature, it should be pretty clear where the inspiration for joy comes from. Brave New World by Aldous Huxley. In Brave New World, which takes place in another totalitarian superstate, society worships no god but Henry Ford and the assembly line.
Ford bless you.
Ford is essentially God in this world, much more literally so than Big Brother in 1984, with people literally swearing on Ford. Children are produced in an assembly line format and separated into 5 castes: epsilons, deltas, gammas, betas, and alphas. Alphas are bred and nurtured to be leaders through chemical stimuli, sleep learning, and some slight selective breeding. Now, despite this conditioning, there is still plenty of discontent, or at least there would be if it weren't for Soma. Soma is a drug, a sedative specifically, that makes its user euphorically happy. This might sound just a slight bit familiar. In a way, Soma is just another method for a regime to distract its people while retaining the illusion of free choice.
Soma a day? I don't need any Soma.
And I don't want any, sir.
Sure, it's not enforced, but it's heavily encouraged and freely available to anyone. We can, of course, talk about the metaphors at play here, namely that Huxley was criticizing the way we increasingly prioritize short-term pleasures over finding real solutions to problems. But in a more literal sense, why was Soma produced? A good answer to that would be the excellent quote from Neil Postman in his 1985 book Amusing Ourselves to Death, where he directly compares 1984 to Brave New World. What Orwell feared were those who would ban books. What Huxley feared was that there would be no reason to ban a book, for there would be no one who wanted to read one. There is very little repression and censorship in Brave New World, at least compared to something like 1984. Sure, no one reads Shakespeare, but no one wants to read Shakespeare. The question that comes up in a conversation between John the Savage and Mustafa Mond, a resident world controller, is perhaps the most important. Is it worth it to sacrifice suffering for happiness if it also means sacrificing art? John says, "It all seems to me quite horrible." And the controller replies, "Stability isn't nearly as spectacular as instability, and happiness is never grand."
I claim the right to be unhappy.
But that also means the right to be sick, to be crippled, to be insane, the right to grow old and ugly and wrinkled, even the right to fall in love, and then be spurned, betrayed, left racked with pain and jealousy. Is all of that really what you want, Mr. Savage?
That's exactly what I want. I claim all of it.
John, as an outsider who has never consumed Soma, simply doesn't understand this mindset and is perplexed by many things in the world state. But those who've lived there their whole life don't think like that. They do not want more, representing Huxley's fear that what we love will ruin us. And so the ultimate form of authority in Brave New World is not repression or distraction, but sedation. But it's also worth mentioning why people might personally take Soma, as this relates to We Happy Few. Unlike the game, Brave New World is a massive world state, so there is no singular reason why people take Soma. Plenty of people likely do it for social reasons. Going out and taking Soma is just what you do. I'm sure plenty also do it to avoid their personal problems. But again, overall, these reasons are not generally personal. The state as a whole has no specific personal reason for Soma, which is not the case in We Happy Few. Why do people take joy in Wellington Wells? Well, of course, it is enforced by the government, but for me this is not the primary reason. It's actually not that hard to avoid being caught as a downer so long as you don't travel between the districts. And as I've already mentioned, I don't think that joy and sedation are real authorities on the island, as outsiders of society still believe in the regime. So here is where my theory comes in, and you're going to have to bear with me here. The difference between joy and Soma is that joy was created to cover the guilt of one specific event. Therefore, the regime that people now believe in, with or without joy, is not a political system but a new moral system. Remember when I talked about the wasted gameplay potential of joy earlier? Well, what if that wasn't an accident? Think about it. Joy is described as making you hazy, euphorically happy, hallucinate, and suppress bad memories. But what happens when you as a character take joy? Ollie can't have joy and will vomit due to his diabetes. But with Sally and Arthur, almost nothing changes. Everything is brighter, screaming sounds like laughing, whistles sound like air horns, but these are fairly minor changes. They still stick with their objectives. With Arthur, his objectives are specifically motivated by unhappy, negative memories, and yet he never loses sight of them while on joy. Now on the wiki, it specifically says that it's possible to build a tolerance to joy. It's also obvious that joy is freely available, literally on the street, to anybody. So what if after all these years of state-enforced joy-taking, people have built up a tolerance? What if the intended effects of joy are now extremely weak? What if it doesn't work anymore? This opens up a whole new possibility, one which might explain what form authority takes on this island where stability and unity are essentially a facade, where bureaucracy is mismanaged and repression is sporadic and unsystematic. Perhaps authority in We Happy Few takes a deeply personal form. Authority is belief, and this belief is formed from guilt. Sorry, let's take a step back and really run through some of the themes that we talked about already. The way we interpret the situation in We Happy Few can be explained by connecting the control of the people to the tragedy of 1947 through 4 linked concepts: authority, belief, guilt, and then acceptance or destruction. Now, we've already discussed authority fairly extensively, but here's what we know so far. There is very little authority on the island, mainly because it's not needed. It's not some totalitarian superstate that sustains the regime, it's everyone. And keep in mind, I know I'm repeating myself here, but like I say, I don't think that joy is as strong as it's said to be, and therefore sedation is not what's keeping people in line. In my opinion, joy is a catalyst to a process that was already taking place. The executive committee doesn't need to obsessively rewrite history or closely surveil the wellies, because a redirection of society is what everyone was craving in the late 40s and early 50s. They believe in the regime, and that's what keeps them in line. It's not joy, it's not the police, it's just belief. And that includes the wastrels, because if you think about it, how is this belief most explicitly manifested? Well, it's Uncle Jack, the friendly symbol of the regime, to which people actually form a familial connection with, including the wastrels. People don't believe in his words blindly or because they're being deceived, but because they want to believe him, and they want to believe that that belief is a good thing. So let's talk about it. What is the timeline of belief in Wellington Wells? To the best of my knowledge, before the German occupation, things were normal. There was an elected mayor and an ordinary system of governance to which people believed in varying degrees. And then the Germans invade and there's no belief in them. And then von Stauffenberg and General Byng form their military dictatorship, and there's perhaps some precarious, naive belief in them. And then the executive committee is put in charge and they immediately send away all the children under 13. The very first act of this new ruling council is a complete betrayal, and all belief in them evaporates. From 1947 to 1953, there is a complete lack of belief among the people. They hate the situation they're in. They hate themselves for letting their children go and hanging those who resisted, but they can't leave. And then what happens? Joy starts to become readily available and the propaganda sets in, communicated by Uncle Jack. And what does Jack say? Does he try to inspire belief in the regime, in a leader, in himself, in an idea? No. He says, take your joy, forget your past, and hate downers.
If there are no authorities, you may need to take action yourself. Call your fellow citizens and let them know they've got a downer in their midst. They'll help you chase and subdue the downer and make sure he takes his joy.
He doesn't need to get them to believe in anything else, because everyone wants to believe in one single idea, the idea that everything is okay. In Orwell's 1984, as a way to inspire belief, the 2-minute hate happens every day, where people in the inner and outer party are forced to watch a film of Emmanuel Goldstein, the primary enemy of the state, and then shout their hatred at the screen. There is no need for such indoctrination in We Happy Few. Even by the 1960s, when the propaganda is all dried up and there's nothing left to believe in, people still believe. The machine of the regime has no engine, and its parts run on delusion and willpower alone. Their belief is just repackaged guilt, a way to finally follow the correct moral standard, to genuinely think they're improving society and atoning for their sins. And part of this belief is killing anyone who challenges it. And no, by the 1960s, I don't think there's any way that joy is still strong enough that people genuinely think that they are subduing downers instead of killing them. I simply do not think people... So why the intensity? Why the brutality? To answer that question, we need to talk about guilt. The very bad thing, i.e. the giving up of the children, wasn't really the inciting incident of the town's guilt. Even if the tanks were fake, they were still under military occupation, and perhaps they thought they had no choice but to do nothing. No, the worst part is they didn't just do nothing. They actively gave up their kids. They hung those who tried to destroy the child register. Sally's mother killed her whole family. Ollie gave up Margaret. Arthur sacrificed his brother to save his own life. There are likely many stories like this. Not things the Germans did, but things the wellies did. Therefore, the collective guilt that remains leaves ultimate authority through repression, sedation, or distraction wholly unnecessary. The Breeder Riots of 1950, before joy is created, represents how desperate people are to forget. They want to move on so badly, to run away from the guilt they feel at their own immorality, that they will kill pregnant women to avoid the thought of children. They yearn for a new moral standard, and when that's the case, any regime, no matter how inefficient or bumbling, can fill that space. Uncle Jack says to the people that you should hate downers the way you hated Germans. So when people go out and beat downers, they essentially experience the catharsis of hitting the Germans who stole their kids. Before they did nothing, and now they fight back, completely unaware that their victim is innocent. It's an outlet for their guilt that joy isn't strong enough to contain, especially after 15 years. They look down on wastrels and they hate downers because they need to believe in the morality of looking down on wastrels and hating downers. It's part of a twisted redemption for them. Therefore, while a collective decision, obedience to and participation in the regime is a very personal affair, it's a coping mechanism that has become dangerously normalized. And what happens when this boils over? What end is in sight for a system that has guilt built into its foundations? The events of We Happy Few, the actual game, covers the end of this dystopian microcosm. The system, the regime, falls apart. And of course, it was always going to, with no organization, no governance, and not even any food supplies. So what the hell was the plan here? George Orwell says, "He who controls the past controls the future. He who controls the present controls the past." And yes, the executive committee weren't just suppressing the past, they were also actively rewriting it. Their How to Be Happy guidebook has some real gems in it. So they do, at least initially, control the past. The committee's emblem also translates to into the future with joy. So they do also aim to control the future, but the thing is, what future? There are no children on the island. From what I can find, there's no official ban, but joy is supposedly a contraceptive, and therefore enforcing joy means enforcing a ban on children. We also learn that food supplies have been heavily depleting, and there's no more trade with the mainland or any production in the Garden District. No children, no food, and no immigration means that it's inevitable that one day soon the population will die out. Now, one might look at this as an accident, a regime that's established as a temporary coping mechanism which becomes permanent through complacency and joy abuse. Certainly the most obvious option, but what if it's wrong? In my opinion, the people, the leaders, even the outsiders of this society tacitly accept the regime and the fact that it would lead to their demise as an ultimate act of something like redemption. Maybe the function of the regime is to destroy itself, a twisted, permanent coping mechanism that works not because the people are coerced, but because they want it to work. I think joy is just there to make the descent slightly easier. An excuse for not having children or worrying about food because they don't want to return to that old normal system that forces them to confront their actions. But people still don't want to have children because they don't want their society to survive, they want it to die. And this facade of comfort, easy living and survival brought on by joy just makes this dying a lot easier. So that's the end. The only outcome for Wellington Wells is destruction. Well, what about Arthur? Arthur, unlike Sally and Ollie it seems, was fully a part of this system. He was a bureaucratic employee that took his joy regularly and then decided to escape when he sees a picture of Percy. But throughout his experience, he is still racked with guilt as his memories return. And even though he makes it all the way to the bridge out of Wellington Wells, he is devastated. He says he can never forgive himself, but the truth is that was never an option for anyone on the island. In his devastation, Arthur is offered an oblivion pill, a much stronger, more memory-erasing version of joy. This choice is probably not real. That policeman is probably not really there.
Are you really a constable?
But it's symbolic of the choice that all wellies might have to make. Forgiveness is not an option. Arthur makes that very clear. But what happens when you decline the pill? Arthur ends up back on the mainland and sees a child for the first time in 15 years. Suddenly he's back in the old normal system, and although he hasn't forgiven himself, there is acceptance. He can move on. Now, cards on the table, I haven't actually seen what happens in the other ending. Like I said, I like my ending and I like not knowing. But I feel like I can't credibly make the claim acceptance or destruction as the only ways out without knowing what the other ending is. So here we go.
Yes!
Arthur goes back to Wellington Wells. He chooses destruction. And if the people chose that along with him, then there's no doubt they will soon die.
You lot told us everything was fine. You told us to pretend it was.
We all wanted to pretend. Don't you remember?
We're all leaving. There's nothing left here.
You can go wherever you like, just not with us.
And so a deeply personal regime ends with a deeply personal choice. Escaping or remaining, abstaining from joy or abusing it, acceptance or destruction. This decision is only possible because We Happy Few is not a whole nation or a world state, it's a single island. It's a microcosm, a dystopia in its early stages. It's like, and bear with me here, a dystopian version of Lord of the Flies. In Lord of the Flies, William Golding proposes the idea that all people, even children, when left outside the constraints of society, will become violent and evil. Man produces evil as bees produce honey. Golding takes away the adults and the kids form a twisted society of violence. In We Happy Few, Compulsion takes away the kids and the adults form a twisted society of violence. However, in Lord of the Flies, this change happens because they are outside the normal world and they know that. It's all meant to be as a result of their inherent nature. In We Happy Few, they are in the normal world, but their guilt causes them to twist this normality. They do not actively know of this violent change. I theorize that some part of them does, but they don't often act like this is the case. And although the system is falling apart, although those like Ollie, Sally, Arthur and Prudence Holmes attempt to escape, the people as a whole might just choose destruction over acceptance. They might pick their masks back up and start taking their joy again and again and again until they die of starvation. The game ends with the inadvertent message that the most dangerous way for a dystopia to become real is for the people to lie back and imagine a utopia. And if you replace joy with our short-term pleasures, and replace the food shortage with the real-world problems of today,
more children have been killed by Israel in Gaza than in all the world.
Life as a man is far more difficult.
We are seeing it with our eyes.
the message becomes scarily relevant. Perhaps our world has already done the very bad thing. Perhaps we are doing it now. Perhaps we are doing it again and again and again. But if we ignore the issues of others and even of ourselves out of guilt for doing nothing, then maybe we are doomed to live in a society like Wellington Wells. And the worst part is, if that ever happens, if it's happening right now, like the people of that island, we wouldn't even know it. Action and acceptance, or complacency and destruction. That is the choice. Damn. Decent view. Thank you for watching this video, this massive hour-long video that took me about 3 months. This wasn't the plan. It was probably going to be like a 15-minute video back in the day, but no, I decided to talk to my sister about her English A-level syllabus and then incorporate that into the last 40 minutes of a video. Speaking of which, thank you to my lead researcher, Emily Atkinson, no relation, who did an English A-level. That's where all the Dystopia stuff came from. Obviously, I did my own research and all my sources will be linked in the description. Obviously, if there's something that I missed, which there might be, let me know. And let me know anything else. Please comment. I like people commenting. I like to talk. I like to have discussions. If you comment, I will probably reply to it. Yeah, I had more stuff I could probably say. I thought what I said was pretty interesting. You can let me know if you thought it was or wasn't. There's a bit I was going to do about Never Let Me Go and Handmaid's Tale. Maybe something to bolster my whole theory. My whole theory in this video about joy. Yeah, it is a bit of a stretch at points. But yeah, I'm rambling. Thank you very much for watching. Like and comment. Don't subscribe. I don't want any subscribers. Just likes and comments. I'm unique like that. And yeah, see ya.